Good morning, friends and families, brothers and sisters in YouTube world. We have the pleasure and the honor of Scott Ritter being on the Real True Talk once again. Um, he's a former Marine intelligence officer who served as a chief inspector for the United Nations in Iraq, leading the search for Iraq's prescribed weapons of mass destructions. He has testified before the U.S. Congress, NATO, and the parliaments of several nations. And he's also the author of 9 books. And we just want to welcome Scott Ritter back to the Real Truth Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We're gonna start with some questions that I came up with, and a couple of my friends came up with, and my wife, and then we're gonna answer questions from the YouTube.
Okay.
First, do you have any things to say first? First of all, do you have anything to say?
No, I'm here to. I feel like I'm on the witness stand, so I'm ready to answer questions.
Well, the best testimonies are from the witnesses. So, sometimes.
Sometimes.
What are your thoughts on the report by CBS that the 101st Airborne has been deployed and is training near the Russian border in Ukraine? This is obvious provocation. Do you think that they will see any action, and why, in your opinion, is our country continuing to provoke war with Russia? Is it their intent to start a world war?
I'll start by answering the last part of the question first. I don't believe it's the intent of the United States to start a world war. In fact, if you listen to the statement made by the president and other senior administration officials, the last thing they want is to have a force-on-force confrontation between the United States and NATO and Russia, because they understand that that could rapidly lead to an escalation that terminates a nuclear conflict, and that would be the end of the world. So they don't want that, but they're on a very dangerous balancing act because two things. One, they can't be seen as rolling over to what they have articulated as unprovoked Russian aggression in Ukraine. To simply stand aside and let Russia do what it wants in Ukraine is politically impossible for the United States and indeed its NATO allies, having spent so many years articulating Russia as the number one threat and using that depiction of a threat as a justification for expanding NATO and building up military budgets, etc. I mean, now we come down to the crux of the problem. NATO. NATO is the problem. It was the expansion of NATO that's led to this conflict. And, NATO is a military alliance in search of a mission. You had a mission pre or post World War II of containing the Soviet Union, protecting Western Europe. But with the collapse of the Soviet Union, that mission went away. And NATO has been desperately trying to find relevance since that time. And that relevance is unfortunately, manufactured by manufacturing a threat from Russia. Now, NATO is an inherently weak organization. Since the end of the Cold War, they've allowed their military infrastructure to degrade. They've gone from having some of the most combat capable units in the world to having units that are barracks queens. That's a gender affiliated term I probably shouldn't have used, but they spend a lot of time in the barracks, and they don't train. They haven't modernized their equipment. They haven't maintained any level of combat proficiency, and now they're confronted with a case where Russia has moved into Ukraine, and they're concerned that if they don't stand up, then they'll look weak, and people in NATO will start to question the viability of continuing NATO. So the United States feels that it had to step up. And it's done so by deploying the 82nd Airborne early on into Poland. And then this past July, they've deployed the 101st, a brigade of the 101st Airborne, 4,700 troops, into Romania. These are just presence. I mean, if you just think about it, I mean, anybody who knows anything about the military knows that while the esprit de corps of the 82nd Airborne is second to none, they consider themselves to be elite warriors because they strap on a parachute and jump out of perfectly good airplanes. But the bottom line is when they hit the ground, they're nothing but light infantry. They're good light infantry. They're capable light infantry, but they're light infantry, and they have zero survivability against a heavily armored force like what Russia brings to bear. So any notion that we would employ either the 82nd Airborne or their air mobile equivalent, the 101st Airborne, which, although they don't jump out of airplanes, they fly into battle on helicopters. While that might give them more operational flexibility, helicopters don't do well against surface-to-air missiles. And Russia's got a lot of surface-to-air missiles. They have an integrated air defense system, and any effort to insert the 101st Airborne using helicopters into territory contested by Russia would be near suicidal. So these are presence forces only. They're there to make our European allies feel better about themselves, feel as though America hasn't abandoned them. But they're purely deterrents. These forces exist to basically tell the Russians, don't think about continuing your attack into Poland or Romania. Of course, Russia isn't considering going into either Poland or Romania. So these exercises are purely an exercise in fooling ourselves. We're fooling NATO into believing that the United States is serious about backing them up. But if we were serious about backing them up, we'd deploy more heavy armored brigades, not these rapidly deployable light infantry units. But this is just all about NATO trying to feel good and relevant within its own circles. I know there's people out there who talk about, well, oh my goodness, the 101st is going to invade Odessa. They're going to go to Ukraine. They're simply not. They can't. They won't survive. They won't make it. Let's say for some reason they got on the ground. Then what? It's not just about putting a boot on the ground. The first law of any military conflict is you better have the logistics to back it up. So what? You send in the 101st with their, they're basically going to carry their basic load. Survive 3 days? Not in intense combat. They might survive a day and a half. And then you better have resupply with what? Helicopters? The ones that didn't get shot down going in or going back. You're going to bring them back. They'll run out of ammunition and they'll all die. And that's just the bottom line. So you don't deploy troops that deep into a conflict zone without running the risk of a bridge too far. You remember the movie from World War II where the 82nd and the 101st jumped in and took two bridges in the Netherlands so a British armor column could go up and capture or reinforce the third town, which was Arnhem, where the 1st British Airborne Division jumped in. But the tanks didn't make it in time, and the 1st British Airborne Division got wiped out by the Germans because they ran out of ammunition, they ran out of logistic sustainability, they couldn't continue the fight. That's what would happen to the 101st Airborne if they went into Odessa. They would go in, it would be a bridge too far, and they would all tragically be killed. And the good news is American military planners know this. So there is no military plan to send these in. All the speculation right now is about the provocative nature of the American deployment. It is a provocative thing on the face of it. But when you dig deeper and you realize that America has no intention of deploying these troops in, and I don't think Russia believes America is going to deploy these troops, it's just part of the spinning up of perception on social media, et cetera. But in reality, I think both sides understand what's at stake here, and the U.S. isn't going to provoke Russia, and Russia is not going to provoke the United States.
Okay. According to the RT News, the president of Guinea, I remember it, but I forgot how to pronounce it. It's Guineai.
Guinea-Bissau?
Yes,
Okay.
Guinea-Bissau. And Balo told his Ukrainian counterpart that the Russian leader was open to talking. Some say that this was Putin's way of reaching out to Zelensky with hopes for peace. For peace talks, though Zelensky has said in the past that peace talks can begin only if Putin is not in power. Do you think there is a chance for peace here, or will Zelensky continue as long as America and its NATO allies continue to funnel money and weapons into the Ukrainian regime?
Let's put it this way. The Russian president has never pushed aside the concept of peace negotiations. He's always been open to it. But we need to understand that peace negotiations aren't surrender negotiations. See, the West believes that we can only have negotiations with Putin when he's defeated, and then we negotiate the terms of his surrender. And Putin's willingness to engage in negotiations is the exact opposite. Negotiations will only be concluded in a manner favorable to Russia, meaning that Russia has achieved its stated objectives of the special military operation, which include denazification, demilitarization. And Russia has said they haven't backed away from this one iota. So any negotiation must include, for instance, denazification. That's the elimination of Stepan Bandera related ideology, all of the neo-Nazis, Azov, etc., eliminated from the Ukrainian scene. Alterations of the Ukrainian constitution to outlaw the ideology of Stepan Bandera, to terminate the clause right now that calls for joining NATO. Demilitarization means getting rid of all NATO influence from the Ukrainian military. Now that the Ukrainian military is a de facto proxy of NATO, it means getting rid of the Ukrainian military. So when Putin says, I'm open to negotiations, what he's really saying is, I'm open to listening to Zelensky surrender to me, because that's what's going to happen. I mean, Zelensky lives in a fantasy world where he thinks that somehow the Ukrainian military is going to evict the Russians and drive them out of the territories that Russia has taken control over, including Crimea. With all due respect to the Ukrainian president, the exact opposite is about to happen. Not only is Russia going to continue to control the territories that it has acquired, it will probably acquire additional territories to include Odessa in the south, Kharkiv in the north, Nikolaev, and Dnipropetrovsk in the center. That's just the reality of the situation. The longer Ukraine holds out and resists and fights, the more territory will be lost. This morning, the Russians struck a critical component of the Ukrainian electrical power grid. Ukrainians are about to go lights out forever. I mean, for the duration of this conflict, and that's the end of them. Their economy won't work. Their industry doesn't work. Nothing will work. The population will be demoralized. The military in the front. Remember, they're men primarily who have wives, daughters, sisters, mothers back in the rear who are suffering, and and they're going to be suffering at the front line as well. This conflict is all over except for the dying. There's going to be a lot of people dying between now and the time this conflict ends. But this conflict will end with a negotiation, but it'll be the kind of negotiation that takes place when you have an absolute victor and a totally defeated enemy. It's called unconditional surrender. And that's what's going to happen, especially if Zelensky continues to play along with the game that the West has put in, that is that Ukraine fights to the last Ukrainian. Russia's willing. I mean, Russia doesn't want to. Russia would like to end this thing now. But Russia's not going to give up that which it has fought for, not going to give up the objectives. Russia's not going to lose. And so anybody who thinks a negotiation is that Putin saying I'm open to negotiation means that, oh, I'm a little nervous that my military is not doing well, therefore I need a negotiated settlement on it. No, the negotiation is he says it every time, because basically the Russian position is we'd like to end this war, we'd like a peaceful outcome, but it's not going to end on terms other than that which are going to be dictated by Russia.
Right. Okay. The United States is preparing to deploy up to 6 nuclear-capable B-52 bombers to northern Australia. It is reported that Washington is planning to build dedicated facilities for the giant aircraft at Tyndall Air Base, south of Darwin. How significant is this as far as escalating to a possible war with China? Will this deter China at all, or will it make things worse than they already are?
There's no deterring China, especially, I mean, what are we deterring them from? The invasion of Taiwan? It's going to happen because of us, not because of China. China was looking for a peaceful resolution to the issue of Taiwan. China and the entire world views Taiwan as part of one China. It's not an independent nation, and yet we've been carrying out relations recently, typified by the recent visit of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, where we are treating Taiwan as a de facto independent nation, as a military ally. Um, and we've seen reports coming out from the CIA and others that say that the Chinese goal of acquiring Taiwan by 2027 has been accelerated. Initially, they said, well, maybe by 2024. Now, some people are saying maybe as early as this fall or early next year. But the bottom line is China will do what China needs to do to ensure that Taiwan is never independent, that Taiwan becomes an integral part of one China. You say, well, that's very un-American. No, we have the one China policy. We bought into that. We just didn't want, and nobody wants, China to invade Taiwan. The idea was that over time, the Taiwanese and the Chinese might be able to reach some sort of political accommodation, and along the lines of what China's already offered, which is, one nation, two systems. Meaning you're part of China, but you guys get to do what you're doing now. I mean, if you're a Taiwanese and you wake up in the morning, one day you might have the Taiwan flag flying. The next day you're going to have the Chinese Communist flag flying, but your life's not going to change. Flag's different. You're the same. You do what you did. You go to work. You have the same freedoms. Read the same newspapers. Nothing changes except that you stop pretending that you're independent and you start acknowledging that you're part of China. One nation, two systems. That's not apparently good enough because the United States isn't about peaceful resolution of issues. We're about provoking, creating confrontation because we thrive in confrontation. And we want a confrontation with China in the Pacific to offset the decisive economic advantages China has accrued over the past several decades in terms of trade relationships with the Pacific Rim. Many nations that used to be our major, where the United States was the major trading partner, we've been supplanted by China, and that irritates us. So, we're trying to, maintain American superiority in the Pacific at a time where American superiority in the Pacific is long past. Putting 6 B-52 bombers in Australia might make the Australians feel good. And it might give us the ability to, because these are nuclear capable bombers, this would give us the ability, which raises the question, is Australia going to be home to nuclear weapons? What does the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty say about this? Is the United States violating yet again another treaty that we signed into? Important questions. But nobody wants to talk about that in the United States or Australia. Same thing with the provision of a nuclear submarine. Really, is Australia a nation that can have nuclear technology? Have they? What is the relationship they have with the International Atomic Energy Agency? Is there a safeguards agreement set up now to manage the fuel that Australia is going to be putting into these nuclear submarines? Important questions. And the answer is no, because the United States and Australia will operate in violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's just what we do. So now we're going to put bombers in Australia, 6 of them. In theory, each one can be armed with several air-launched cruise missiles that are nuclear capable. So this is a first strike capability against China, a retaliatory. If China invades Taiwan, we're going to nuke China? Really? I thought we had a policy that said we won't. Oh no, wait a minute. You're right. Biden just published a policy that said we can nuke anybody anytime we want, anywhere we want, and for whatever reason we want. We're going to hold the world hostage. Well, you can't hold China hostage, you see. And this is sort of a news flash for Australia. Your pathetic little nation is going to disappear in a cloud of radioactive dust if you do keep going down this path, because now you've become a viable nuclear target, not just the airbase in Australia, but your leadership, command and control. That Canberra, that little capital you have that manages your little country, it'll disappear. So will every other military base. You want to play big boy games, you pay big boy prices. Australia's not a big boy country. Stay away from the nuclear, from buying into the nuclear addiction. A U.S. Air Force general recently threatened China, saying that if they invade Taiwan, the U.S. is going to interdict Chinese logistics on the mainland. Here's the other potential mission for the B-52, a non-nuclear mission, where it could launch air-launched cruise missiles from a distance and attack sites inside China. But okay, put yourself in America's shoes. Let's say for a second Chinese bombers came off the coast of the United States and started firing cruise missiles into American cities. Would we just sit there and take it? Or would we reach out and touch in the most violent way possible the bases where these Chinese bombers came from? Again, if these bombers take off from Darwin or from the air base near Darwin, that air base will be disappeared, whether it's by nuclear attack or conventional attack. Why do we want to find out? So this is a deliberately escalatory move by the United States. It's grossly irresponsible. And frankly, for the Australian people, it puts your entire nation in harm's way.
Right. Man. Will the midterms elections in November, if Republicans can gain control over the House, or both for that matter, change anything as far as the war in Ukraine? I think most Americans, at least myself, are more concerned about the issues we have here at home. Example, inflations, drugs coming across the border, woke ideology infiltrating American cultures. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, I think when you take a look at polls, the economy is the number one concern for Americans. Everything else I mean, drugs should be a concern, violence should be a concern, education, healthcare, infrastructure, the whole thing. Woke, I'm going to put that aside because regardless of what my personal opinions are on that, when you deal with lifestyles and stuff, the other side gets a vote. I don't think anybody gets a vote on drugs. Drug violence. I don't think anybody can say I'm pro drug violence. You don't get that vote. I don't think I don't think there's some things where it's sort of black and white. Woke is gray. Doesn't matter where my position is on it. I think you could probably tell, but I think, we have to respect that there are viable differences of opinions, and we should respect them, and they need to have a voice, and the American people as a collective need to decide those issues. And that's done through the electoral process by electing people to higher office who will consider these things within the framework of the Constitution, which provides rights that cannot be abridged by Congress. So, we live in interesting times, but the economy is the number one thing that bothers people. And it is troublesome for many Americans to see, upwards of 60 billion, probably getting close, we're getting close to $100 billion, $100 billion worth of American taxpayer money being thrown away in a war in Ukraine that didn't need to be fought, is only fought because of our policies, and is only being continued because of our policies. We gain nothing from this. In fact, the longer this war goes on, it's not weakening Russia, it's weakening us. It's weakening Europe, weakening NATO, it's weakening everything we claim to stand for. We can't win this conflict. All we can do is kill more Ukrainians, which we're doing, and then squander American taxpayer money, which we're doing. And then what? Let's say for a second when Russia wins, because pro tip to all Americans, Russia's going to win this war. When they win, what do we do now? Having put down such a heavy hand on winning this thing, we now lost. What do we have to do? We have to build up our military forces in Europe to withstand the Soviet horde coming across the border. How much money is that going to cost? I mean, and we have to do it meaningfully. We can't do it, halfway, which means not one division, not two divisions, not three. We're going to have to put a couple corps worth of military equipment on the ground. We're talking hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. You ready to spend that, America? I don't think so. That's why we're having this election. That's why the Democrats are going to be pushed out, because of the economy. The problem is the American public is also has been deeply propagandized about Russia, being anti-Russia. I mean, we just had this representative from Maryland, Jeremy Raskin, I think his last name is, makes some of the. I mean, I don't want to get in. I got to be careful what I say, but here's a Jewish guy, okay, who knows what the Holocaust was, who knows what happened to Jews when people talked about we need to eliminate a certain race, a certain class of people, an ethnicity, a religion. And I thought the Jewish people and the world have come in to embrace the concept of never again. Never again can this happen. And he just came out and said that because the Russians are Orthodox Christians and they believe in traditional values, they must be destroyed at any cost. What? Really? This is a Jew saying that people should be destroyed because of their religious values? This man's insane, insane. And yet he isn't being hounded out of Congress. There's not a horde of people surrounding his house saying, get out of here. There's too many Democrats who go, yeah, we sign up with that belief. We believe it. And there's too many Republicans going, yeah, we too. We don't really want to say because Raskin's a Democrat. We don't want to be seen as agreeing with the Democrat. But yeah, we don't like Russia either. We don't like Russia either. That's the thing. People keep saying we don't like Russia, but they don't know anything about Russia. They don't know what they're going against. I'd love to have Raskin right here, right now, third screen up there saying, hey, what about traditional Christian values in Russia bothers you so much that you want to destroy them? No, he couldn't answer that question. He said, they're blather. Because that's what he does for a living. He blathers. But this is where we stand. The American public has been brainwashed, actively brainwashed to hate everything about Russia to the point that we allow a Jew, and I don't mean that derisively, I'm saying he's Jewish, to allow a Jew to stand up and say it's okay to target people for destruction because of their religion. Think about that. It's just crazy. But we're not challenging him. We're nodding our head and saying, yeah. So, yeah, even though the Republicans are going to come in, it's going to be hard for them. I mean, they're running on a platform right now that says, we might pull back a little bit from Ukraine. But all it will take is one person to stand up and say, yeah, you're weak. You're giving in to Russia. You're giving in to Putin. You're giving in to the dictators. And they'll go, oh, yeah, well, I guess we got to continue the money going because they stand for nothing. The people we elect to Congress, Republican or Democrat, stand for absolutely nothing, stand for themselves. You really think they care about the economy? They don't. The only economy they care about is their own economy. They care about what goes in their pocket, their bank accounts. But they can't get into Congress where they're allowed to get insider trading on the stock market and make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for themselves while we, the people, suffer. No, they can't get into Congress unless they lie to us. And right now they know that there's a lot of Americans saying, hey, we're a little uncomfortable with this Ukrainian thing, all that money going over there. So they're probably going, yeah, you vote me in, we're going to solve that problem. But we vote you in, you ain't going to solve anything because you're just corrupt congressional representative who only cares about your own personal bottom line. Until we take the money out of politics, that's what we're going to get. We shouldn't be surprised about it. When we make it all about money, then don't be surprised when the people we elect to office are all about the money, their money. Not our money, not the taxpayers' money, their money, how they get rich. Who underwrites them? Raytheon? Lockheed Martin? You don't think they have a vested interest in what's going on right now in Ukraine, keeping this war going so that they can just make more and more money? I mean, when the Raytheon CEO says, hey, this Ukraine thing is good for our bottom line, what's that mean when you have a congressman who has insider trading, who's ever able to invest into Raytheon, knowing that last week they talked about upping the budget so that more arms are shipped. So he goes and buys a lot of Raytheon stock before that becomes public knowledge. Then it becomes public knowledge, and the Raytheon stock shoots up. And then he realizes, oh, there's going to be something coming out that's going to be bad for Raytheon. So they sell the stock, pocket the profits. Raytheon stock goes down. We get jammed if we buy it. I don't have enough money to buy Raytheon stock, and I wouldn't buy it if I could. But it doesn't matter. It's the people who do get jammed because they don't have the insider trading. Congress does. It's so corrupt. And Nancy Pelosi's like, well, we're allowed to trade just like every other American. Every other American doesn't have the insider information that you do, Nancy. You shouldn't be allowed to own any stocks when you're in Congress. You shouldn't be allowed to have any potential conflict of interest. You should be as pure as the driven snow. You're serving the American people. We pay you your salary from our taxes. You don't need to make supplemental income by manipulating the American economy the way you do, but that's what they do. So that's a long way of saying, yeah, I know what the Republicans are running on. I know what they've said. I don't expect any changes from them because they all lie. Their lips move. They know they're lying.
Yes, sir. What would you do, Mr. Ritter, if you were the president right now? If this November was the presidential election and you ran for the president of the United States of America and won, what would be your course of action as president upon entering office?
Well, I mean, understand that the president can't do a lot without congressional support. So I would certainly have hoped in my campaign to have attracted people who have similar belief values to run for Congress and convince enough Americans to put them in office so that I would have a Congress willing to work with me to enact these policies. First and foremost, I would redefine national security in terms of the American discussion. Because right now, when you say national security, the first thing that comes to mind is defense. And I would say that the number one priority for national security is the health of the American people. That you can't be a secure nation without a healthy nation. So I would make healthcare my number one priority. I also believe that health is not just physical, but mental. And mental means we need an educated citizenry. So I would make education one of my top priorities. And I also believe that if you're going to live in America, America should function properly. We should have roads that don't have potholes. We should have bridges that aren't in danger of collapsing. We should be able to communicate in a competitive fashion with the rest of the world with high-speed internet connectivity and things of this nature. So infrastructure. Those three things are how I define national security. The last thing I define national security as is the Defense Department. See, I have to define an America worthy of being defended. I have to create an America that's worth defending. It's not worth putting all your money into a military to defend this collapsing structure. No, I'm sorry. Fix America, then defend America. Now, that means that I'm going to be diverting a tremendous amount of resources from the military. I believe in a strong military, but I don't believe in a military that has to be capable of fighting everybody everywhere at once. I believe that rather than seeking military alliances that seek to divide the world, we should be focusing on economic partnerships that unite the world. That we should be focusing on multipolarity instead of American singularity. I know that's going to irritate a lot of Americans because, my God, America's the best country in the world. God made us here, and we're here to lead the world, and the world has to do what we want. Well, wake up. The world doesn't believe in that. Doesn't. Why don't we just say, hey, we're a good country. We're capable of doing good things, and we're going to work with the world to do good things. But there might be cases where the world doesn't want to look like us, sound like us, talk like us. You know, not everybody wants to be a duck. They might want to be a goose. Or they might want to be something else because they are something else. American democracy doesn't work here at home. So why are we trying to export it abroad as the greatest thing since sliced bread? Let's fix it here. Let's make it work here. And let's help them figure out what's going to work for them based upon their needs, their values, their ideals, their history, their culture. That's how I would interact with the world as a responsible member of the world. But, you know, and look, I believe in the theory. You mess with me, you die. I mean, it's just that easy. You roll over for nobody. And as an American president, I would never apologize to anybody. You mess with me in a way that threatens the people I'm trying to help, my country, I'll kill you. And it ain't going to be a fair fight. I don't believe in a fair fight. I don't believe we walk into a room, we each pick up a 6-inch knife blade and go at it. You pick up the knife, I'm blowing away with a damn bazooka. Boom, no chance at all. The fight ain't even going to start. You're in the room waiting for me to come in. I drop the building. There is no fair fight. You die when you mess with America. That's the way. And so I would build a military capable of doing that. But then I wouldn't interact with the world saying, hey, fight. I would interact with the world the exact opposite, saying, you know, I'm here to be a responsible member of the community. I'm here to work with you to come up with the right laws for all of us, the rules that apply to all. This rules-based international order that Joe Biden and everybody is promoting, it's not a rules-based international order. It's simply a scam that America runs to dominate the world. And this scam has to end. We have to get rid of the rules-based international order and come up with a law-based international order, one where the law applies to everybody, including ourselves. I mean, what hypocrites we are to pretend that we can enforce the law for everybody. We can do anything we damn well want because we're Americans. Well, the world is fed up with that approach. America has more credibility if we actually hold ourselves accountable to the same laws that we hold other people to accountable. Why? Because then we are truly setting a model. It's like my parent, it's like a parent. I'm not going to say my parents just be, oh, your parents did that. No. I mean, a parent running around, don't smoke. Don't smoke, it's bad for you. Where's that other pack of cigarette? Or, don't drink. What is that? Is that a good example? No. A good example is don't smoke. I don't smoke, look at my health. I don't drink, look at my health. So don't drink. But, America's running around telling people what to do while we're doing it. You must abide with the treaty. We break every treaty we sign. We are the least honorable nation in the world. when it comes to compliance with treaties. Don't invade other nations. Oh, okay, Iraq. I'm sorry. Do unto others. Look, America. So as a president, I would put the number one priority the American people. But in order to make the American people prosperous, I have to have, as part of this number one priority, better relations with the world that are defined by productive, cooperative engagement, and not America dictating solutions to the world with the tip of a bayonet. So a lot of money would be going out of the military. I'm sorry. Lockheed Martin, learn to make better stuff that doesn't involve killing people. Now, but I would also say that if I'm going to have this military, there has to be a good defense industry, because one of the key aspects of a military, you can't have a president talk stuff that doesn't have something to back it up. So if I'm going to say it ain't going to be a fair fight, that means I have to have the weapons capable of doing it. Now, I would also strongly encourage no nuclear war. I would be working toward a zero nuclear war. I would immediately do what Biden promised but didn't do, which is have a sole purpose statement. The only purpose of American nuclear weapons is deterrence, and we are deterring anybody from using nuclear weapons against us. So if you attack us with nuclear weapons, we will respond in kind. That's what our nuclear arsenal is. I would do away with any of this notion of preemptive strike and all that stuff. Don't hold the world hostage to American nuclear power. And once we have a sole purpose, then we have to say, okay, if that's our purpose, take a look at the threats and say, let's reconfigure our nuclear arsenal so that that's what we do. We have a retaliatory capability, not a first strike capability. So I would get rid of low yield nuclear weapons and all this crap. I would just basically say, you hit me, remember, there ain't a fair fight. If you hit me, your nation disappears. That's my law. You hit me with a nuclear weapon, your nation disappears. Okay, so don't hit me with a nuclear weapon. And now that we both agree that we don't want to use nuclear weapons, why don't we talk about getting rid of them? Because it makes no sense. If I have a shotgun tied up so it's against your head with a string on the trigger, and you have a shotgun so it's tied up against my head with a string on the trigger, okay, we both agree not to pull the trigger. Why don't we just get rid of the damn shotgun? Instead of sitting there waiting for each other to blow each other up, we just get rid of the shotgun and learn to live that way. So I'd be pursuing a meaningful arms control, leading to global zero, and things of that nature. It's just how we interact with the world. And I'll also tell you this, there will be dividends. There will be dividends. The world's tired of America sanctioning them. No more sanctions. I don't believe in sanctions. I believe in free trade. The world, is tired of us telling them what to do. I rather than going in and saying, I want to do business with your country, but before that, you have to adhere to what I believe in. So I'm going to tell you about your abortion policy. I'm going to tell you about your education policy. I'm going to tell you about everything. I'm going to tell you how to run your country before we do business. No. I come in, I go, I want to do business with you. And what you do in your country is your business. I mean, maybe if you're slaughtering people, I don't want to do business with you anymore. Okay, but that's me not wanting to do business. I can't tell the rest of the world not to do business with you. But we have to learn how to be good neighbors, but moral neighbors. A good neighbor minds their own business, but also sets an example by the way they live. And that's what we should be doing. Fix our problems here at home. You know how you get more people to sort of support America? When they land at JFK Airport and they don't see a cesspool. When they land at JFK Airport and they have a smooth transition out of the terminal into public transportation that takes them through a pristine city into this shining example of American modernity. Instead they get a taxi that hits some potholes as they go down the road and divert and road traffic. This honk, come in and they're told, oh, it's night. You can run into the hotel because you get mugged if you stay out too late. Really? That's how we want to show the America to the world, but that's what the world sees. Any airport they land in. So let's fix that. And that would what I'd be doing. I'd be a one-term president because I'd piss everybody off and they'd kick me out. But that's it.
And then here's another one. It says, what do your contacts in the military or government, if any, say about our current situation?
I don't have that many contacts in the government or the military anymore. A lot of people walked away from because of Iraq. I do have friends who aren't in the military anymore, people who were my peer group. We stay in contact. I will say that my stance on Russia is not a popular stance. I can say that safely. But our friendship is greater than any disagreement we might have on policy. They have their positions. I have my positions. And we are, but we operate on the principle of the best way to work through disagreements is through polite discussion, debate, and dialogue. I mean, one of my oldest friends and I have heated exchanges via email. My wife has read them and said, "My God, you're going to threaten our friendship." I said, "Don't you understand what our friendship is based on?" I mean, when I first met him, we were in the Soviet Union, and it was during the election where George H.W. Bush was going up against Michael Dukakis. And he, of course, was a Dukakis supporter, and I was a Bush supporter. And we would sit in the cafeteria in the Soviet Union and have these debates. Yeah, son of a Dukakis is a wimp. Bush is a dangerous criminal. Dukakis is a wimp. And the Russians were like, man, those guys hate each other. And everybody's like, no, they're best friends. How can they be friends or talking like this? Because that's what makes our friendship stronger, is the fact that they disagree on so much, but we agree on many things, such as the right to disagree. I mean, that's a fundamental thing. And so I have a lot of people that disagree. All I say is this: a lot of people have disagreed with me over the course of time, and but I'm very public in my stance. I write things a lot, and I stand by my record. That's the problem they have with debating me, because all I do is sit back and go. It's like telling me you want to play me in football and you're going to kick my butt. And we're in the fourth quarter and the score is 53-0. And they're still saying, we're going to kick your butt. All I have to do is sit back and go, look at the scoreboard, man. And that's how I feel on most of the issues that we discuss, is that I've been on the right side of history. History has proven me correct. That doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes. That doesn't mean that sometimes I get it wrong, because I do. I'm only human. I mean, we can talk about intelligence all you want, but that's military intelligence, which is inherently contradictory term. But the key thing here isn't that we disagree. Key thing is that we respect the differences of opinion, and we have polite and fact-based discussions about very critical issues. And if all Americans adhered to that norm, we'd be a far better country for it. We wouldn't be as divided, because there are things we can disagree about. I don't know if you and I would have much to disagree, but I'll give another example. A female colleague, Air Force veteran, very honorable, hard-serving person, tested by many trials and tribulations through her military service. She is very progressive, very progressive, and I'm not. But she and I will get together, and her family, my family will get together, and we'll just have a great time together, because we sort of dig the fact that we're so opposite, that she's who she is and I'm who I am, and we can disagree on some pretty fundamental things. And yet what we agree upon is being good people, that good people take care of one another. Good people are there when somebody needs help. It doesn't matter what her opinion on X policy or Y policy is. If she needs help, I reach out and I help her. It doesn't matter what my opinion is on A policy or B policy. If I need help, she reaches out, and she did. She's one of the few people, I can't say few, but she stuck with me through thick and thin. And, and you know what I'm talking about here. So there was no abandonment. There was no this. It was, I'm sticking by you because you're my friend. And that's what it's all about. Good people being good to one another, regardless of their differences of opinions.
Right. Mike Adams from, I don't know if you've heard of Natural News, is always talking about white hats in the government, military who are against everything in current administration is promoting and are working behind the scenes to turn things around. Is there anything true to this, to your knowledge, and is there anything you would like to get out there that the average Americans do not know about regarding the war or future of our country?
Well, I don't hold any deep, dark secrets about the current war or the future of our country. I think I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I and very open about it. So there's nothing more I can say than I've already said. I will say this about the so-called white hats. They should all be found and fired. Why? Because the military doesn't get to do that. You know, who elected the white hats? Who? How many votes did they get in the last election? Not a single damn one. So why do they think they're suddenly empowered to act behind the scenes, to fix things, to turn it around? They don't have that right at all. You and I have that right as citizens. If we're unhappy with what we're seeing, we vote in new people who change it. But the military works for civilian leadership, and that civilian leadership is defined by the American people whom we elect, by who we elect during the election. That's why every election is important. This midterm election is important. But if you're in government service, do your damn job. Don't work behind the scenes. If you oppose something, write a point paper, put it down on paper, send it in. Now, you may get fired, but that's okay. That's what happens. But put it on paper. Try and work with the system. That's how change comes, by saying, hey, boss, I think this is wrong. This is why it's wrong. But if the reason why you think it's wrong is political in nature, hey, in the military, you're apolitical. I know we get to vote. We get to have political opinions. But at the end of the day, we have to salute and obey whomever is elected in that commander-in-chief position. I can tell you, I went in the military under Ronald Reagan. I had no problem saluting and obeying Ronald Reagan. I had a huge problem. I had no problem doing the same thing with George Herbert Walker Bush. I went to war but under George Herbert Walker Bush's command. Bill Clinton, I had huge problems with that. Didn't change anything I did. My job was to salute smartly and obey the orders, not to sabotage him behind the scenes. They'll say, well, what'd you do as a UN inspector? I wasn't a serving member of the United States military at the time. I was serving the United Nations at the time. And in any capacity, I was a civilian. And as a civilian, I get to do whatever the hell I want to do. That's sort of the benefit of being an American. Having the Constitution, freedom of speech. You don't like it? Turn off the YouTube channel. Don't read what I publish. I don't care. I get to say it no matter what. So do you. So does everybody here. We get to do that as civilians. That's our job as civilians. The government works for us. Free press, freedom of speech is for our right to hold the government accountable, not the government's right to try and suppress us. But if you're in the government, especially in the capacity as a serving member of the military, you don't have free speech. You don't. Want proof? Hey, Colonel, Mr. White Hat, stand up right now and say that you refuse to obey the orders of the commander-in-chief because he sucks. Hunter Biden's laptop. Joe Biden's a moron. You'll be out of office, out of position that quick because you don't have a right to say that. You don't have free speech. You gave that up when you joined the military. You took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, but it doesn't mean that the Constitution applies to you. The Uniform Code of Military Justice applies to you. So any white hat that's out there, working behind the scenes to change things because they don't agree with the official policy that's put out by our civilian leadership is violating the Constitution, that which they took an oath to uphold and defend. Stop it. You're criminals. You're wrong. If you don't like it, get out of the military and run for office yourself. If you want to change things, get out of the military. And if your ideas are so damn good, tell me about them. Don't work behind the scenes. What do I know what you're doing behind the scenes? Be honest about it. Transparency. That's what democracy is about. If you're unhappy, leave the military, run for office, tell me why I should vote for you. And if I agree, I'll vote for you. So now you can change things the way they should be changed. By law, through Congress, through our civilian leadership. But any military member who's putting on his so-called white hat and working behind the scenes is undermining the very principles he claims or she claims to stand for, that are principles enshrined in the Constitution, which specifically prohibit that very thing that they're doing.
Right. A Ukraine journalist, along with multiple sources, say that a false flag dirty bomb attack is being planned, and Russia has evidence of this false flag. The narrative being that this attack will, be planned by someone from Belarus using a disguised Russian Iskander missile to be detonated over Chernobyl and blamed on Russia and Belarus.
Yeah.
This in fact will be a Ukrainian Tonka-U missile disguised
Tochka, ooh. Yeah.
to U.S. U missile disguised as a military or as a Russian missile and shot down by Kiev air defense systems and shown via Western media to influence the West to war against Russia. Is there any truth to this? And what are your thoughts? Do you know of any intel or news about this false flag being planned by the West and against Russia and Belarus?
Well, again, I'll just start off that I only know what appears in the open press. I don't have a hotline to the Pentagon or the CIA or the White House where I can get classified information. I don't deal with classified information anymore. And if I did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So right off the bat, we have to deal there. The other thing I'll say is, again, I'll point out the intelligence aspect there.
Nice.
My kids got it for me for Christmas because they thought it was the perfect way of proving that I was wrong all the time. Because military intelligence, never right. But the fact is, having worked in the intelligence business for some time, I'm pretty good at deconstructing claims made by governments because I know how arguments are put together. I know when they say X, Y, and Z, that tends to give away sources. So when I hear the Russian case that's been put in there, there's some very specific aspects of it. Let's start with one, that this has been ordered by the presidency. That implies that there is somebody privy to the internal discussions within the Zelensky circle. That's a human agent. So somebody who's there. Now, I would imagine that the Ukrainians are pretty good at their security. So I don't think, first of all, the Russians wouldn't tell us something if they had somebody sitting right next to Zelensky. Because sources and methods, because there's smart people like me in the Russian service going, or in any of the Ukrainian service, or even the CIA going, the Russians said that. But that information only came from a meeting where there are 5 people there. And now they go in with 5 people, they find the idiot that passed the intelligence and they shoot him. And the Russians don't want that because they want to continue to get that intelligence stream. So it implies it's a human that's several times removed from the inner circle. And what that means is they're only getting fragmentary information. And what's important about that is they might get a hint of intent or of something that was discussed, but they don't know what the final outcome was. And that's important to know. And then the other thing, they talked about specific industries that were involved, establishments that were involved in this, that were going to be talking about producing the object itself, et cetera, et cetera. Again, the specificity of this is such that probably there were telephone calls intercepted where people were talking about, hey, if we wanted to do this, how could we do it? What would we need? Well, I'd need this and that. Well, where would you get it? Well, I need to work with this people here. And they create this map of enterprises and stuff that could be doing something like this. Now I put on my Scott Ritter hat as a former intelligence guy, and I'm receiving this information. I'm going, okay, fragmentary, incomplete intercepts, because you never get the whole conversation. This doesn't work that way. Very rarely. Boom, boom, boom. Boss, it looks like we might have a dirty bomb thing. So I write it up, I send it up my chain, and my boss goes, I think that's important too. Put their own comments on it up the chain until somebody decides we got to brief the president about this. And so now an intelligence officer comes in and briefs Putin about this. And Putin has to say, well, what am I going to do about this? And the answer is we have to preempt it diplomatically. So we're going to release certain aspects of this. I'm sure there's things that the Russians know that they didn't tell the world because of, again, protecting sources and methods. But they put up a statement and they release it, and they have Shoigu, the defense minister, call his counterparts to say, hey, we're concerned about this intelligence stream we're getting. We want to notify you that we won't tolerate this. There will be consequences for this. And we'd also like you to put whatever pressure you can on the Ukrainian government to make sure this never happens. And even though the West has come out and said this is all propaganda the Russians are doing, I can guarantee you that Lloyd Austin stood up straight when he got the call from Shoigu, not because he subordinated to him, but because he was serious. Ministers of defense don't call each other for trivial matters. They call each other about life and death issues. this is a life and death issue where Russia was putting the world on notice that they won't tolerate the false flag from Ukraine. So it was serious, and I think it had its intended effect. I think while publicly they're denying it, I think privately phone calls were made, and the Zelensky government and we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And you know what? I believe them. You see, because a lot of intelligence that you get aren't about completed concepts. They're about things that are being considered. Imagine, for instance, you're Zelensky, and you're looking at Russia mobilizing. Russia just hit your power grid. NATO's starting to get a little cold feet. There's not any more weapons to give you. Instead of giving you 200 tanks, they're giving you 3 tanks. Things like that. And you're like, if this continues, we're going to lose. We need more assistance, but how do I get them to give me more assistance? So he has a brainstorming session about how do we get the Europeans to jump on board. And in that brainstorming session, somebody might have said, why don't we do a false flag? And do this, we create this thing, because there's a lot of talk right now about a Russian preemptive nuclear strike. So why don't we feed into that, create a false flag that makes it look like Russia did that, and then the West will have to come in and support us like they did against the Syrians back when the rebels had that false flag incident in Duma, where they said sarin nerve agent was used. The United States and France and Great Britain fired missiles and dropped bombs on Syria. Only found out it was a false flag. No sarin was used. So that's what they want to do. So I think the idea was developed. I think it was shot down by the presidency, either before the Russians made the phone call or after, but I don't think there's any threat of this. Let me tell you why. Because let's start with what the Russians are saying. The idea is to fire a Tochka-U missile, which is a unique category of missile only the Ukrainians have right now. The Russians used to have it. They've retired it. The Belarusians have some, but they're being replaced by Iskander's more modern version of that missile. They're going to fire a Tochka-U with a radiological device on there. They call it a dirty bomb, but the idea of this radiological device is it's going to be intercepted by Ukrainian air defense, and then it's going to blow up. Now, if the radiological device is constructed in a way where it's purely just a dirty bomb, meaning they're taking contaminated material, that material is not going to be related, because the idea is to say that they intercepted a Soviet warhead or Russian warhead and it blew up. Not a nuclear, it didn't blow up as a fission, because that isn't going to happen, but it blew up in a manner which contaminates using the material that would be in a nuclear bomb. So there has to be unique material there, not stuff that comes from a nuclear reactor per se. So right off the bat, that has to be a very sophisticated device that when it gets hit is going to spew material that one would expect to find if a nuclear bomb had suffered a fizzle, meaning you get hit, one of the nuclear charges goes off, but it doesn't do the compression. It just goes off, and instead of the big fission device, you get a fizzle, and there's going to be unique signature for that. So first of all, the people doing this have to know a lot about nuclear weapons. Now, the Ukrainians have these people. So they would have to reverse engineer that event to make sure that they had enough specific, radiological isotopes related to a fizzle event impregnated in the high explosive that they're doing. But even then, the material that they're using has a unique signature that's linked to a specific reactor. Each reactor, even if they're designed the same. Let's say I build nuclear reactors for a living. I go to Texas and I build a nuclear reactor in Texas, and I build one here in New York. Same design, same fuel type, but the byproducts are going to be different. There's going to be a little difference in each one because it's going to operate differently. It's not going to operate the same. Humans are involved. The basic physics of this. So if I detect a nuclear particle, I can't just say it's this. I can look at it and say, that's the New York reactor, because they have a little design flaw here. Or they have something that does this. So where is Ukraine going to get the nuclear material? From Ukrainian sources? That means that the finger is going to point right back at them. The other thing is they're going to use a Tochka and call it an Iskander. Now, they can get away with it. Why? Because the Russians have fired a whole bunch of Iskanders into Ukraine. But then they're going to seed the area with Iskander remnants and say, See, these are the Iskander parts that fell from the missile that we intercept, because they have intercepted Iskanders. So they have Iskanders that have been intercepted. But is it going to be contaminated? Did they go that far? You see, because if it fizzled, the parts should be contaminated too, different levels of contamination. See, somebody like me who's trained in forensic investigations of this very thing is going to come in and start asking questions. Say, there's a problem here. You're saying it's a fizzle, but the part you put down here ain't contaminated. How did that happen? Or I might sit there and go, oh, there's a serial number here. Well, gosh, hey, Russia, this is your serial number. When did you produce this missile? Here, give me the history of it. Boom, 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 boom. Here's the firing log. We fired that missile a month and a half ago. How come now you're saying it's used against Chernobyl? And here's the last thing. The Russians have a lot of good intelligence. And so does the United States and NATO. So guess what, Ukraine? When a Tochka-U or an Iskander goes off, it creates an infrared signature picked up by overhead capabilities. And then we have radars all over the place that are tracking the trajectories of these things. So if you want a missile to be claimed to be fired from Belarusian territory, but you're firing from Ukrainian territory, ain't no one going to believe that, dude. We got all the intelligence of the world that says right where it came from. So do the Russians. And on something of this nature, Russia historically doesn't like to release this data because it gives away capabilities. But on something like this, Russia would definitely release this data and say, it's fired from Belarus. Here's the flight plan. Here's the missile that intercepted it. It's a Tochka-U. Boom. That's what happened. And then, the United States and NATO would have to look at their stuff and yeah, we got the exact same radar track. We got the exact same infrared signature. The Ukrainians are lying. Do we want to go to nuclear war over a Ukrainian lie? And the answer is no. So that's why this issue's gone away. It's stupid to begin with. It was dumb from the premise. It's dumb in its execution. And politically, it's suicide for NATO and the United States to allow Ukraine to do anything like this.
Okay. Fake news media here in the U.S. and Western nations are not telling Americans the truth about this war in Ukraine. Where would you recommend an average American or anyone watching this interview right now, what alternative news source would you recommend they get their truth from? Besides your channel.
Me, baby. No, I don't. I was being a little facetious there.
No.
Look, that's a tough one because, there's no single source out there that I could say this is 100% reliable. The Russian Ministry of Defense does daily briefings, but they're only putting out the side of the story they want to put out. I read it. I don't think they're lying about anything. But when was the last time the Russians said, last night we got hit by HIMARS, they took out 2 command posts and we suffered 86 dead? When was the last time Russia said, yeah, we launched a counterattack, but the Ukrainians hit us with artillery and Javelin missiles and we lost 16 tanks and 200 dead? Russia doesn't release this kind of information, but it's happening. War is ugly. Even when you're winning, you're losing. And what I mean by losing is you're losing people, you're losing equipment. Just take a look at Marine casualties on Okinawa in World War II. Up until the end, right before the Japanese surrender, we were getting slaughtered. If I took that snapshot of Charlie Company get hit by Japanese artillery and a Japanese attack, and Charlie Company suffered 30% casualties, because look at the casualty rate in Okinawa. We took heavy hits because war is hell. Same thing in Germany. Up until the very end, Americans were dying in Germany in large numbers. If you take a snapshot of that, you'd say, oh my God, Americans losing the war. No, we're not. But war's ugly business. And so, you can't just look at the casualty figures and say, I know what's going on, because you got to combine everything together. This is what I try to do. We both know I've been wrong on some things. Okay, I accept that. But it's not because I want to be wrong. I'm trying to be right. But, you collect the data that you can get. And it's imperfect data. It's incomplete data. Can't believe what the Ukrainians are saying. I can't believe what NATO's saying. I can't believe what Russia's saying. I can't believe what anybody's saying. But I have to take all their data, put it together. And then what I try to do is go back on my military experience and try and reinterpret this data to see how it makes sense. because everybody can't be winning and everybody can't be losing. Somebody's winning, somebody's losing overall. What does the data point to? And you also have to look at force structure. One of the big takeaways from this is an artillery-driven war, and Russia has a significant advantage in artillery. So you have to factor that in when you do your calculations. Russia is able to bring to bear far more air power on the battlefield than the Ukrainians are. So you have to factor that in. The Ukrainians can offset some of this with American-provided intelligence that links up to HIMARS that allows, very precise, kill shots. So it's not like all the, Russian multiple launch rocket systems where 400 missile rockets get sent and 16 hit their targets. When HIMARS fires, if the rocket makes it in, it probably hits its target. So they fire 12. Let's say 6 get through, 6 targets hit. That's pretty good. But you have to go through all of this and assess it. What I would say is there's no single source that I would rely on. The best thing I would do is go out and find, say, 2 sources that seem to be leaning towards the Ukrainians, but have got their track record. And if they, historically, that their calls have been fairly correct, okay, you want to read them. I'd find 2 that are from the Russian side. Again, check their track record. And if what they've been saying is fairly correct, it means they're I'd find 2 in the middle and check their track record. And if they seem to be, then I'd bring all 6 of those together and read them. And then the analysis I'd rely upon is the one between this earlobe and this earlobe, the one produced by this computer. And that's the only one I ever rely on. Don't ever hold yourself hostage to something you get from the internet or something you read. At the end of the day, make your own, conclusion. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. And I know everybody wants the shortcut. You want to go to the one source that's correct, but there is no one source that's correct. No, even if you say, well, Scott Ritter's correct, not all the time. Plus, you don't know my motives. I could be fooling one right now. I could be a paid Russian agent who's sitting here trying to spew, Russian crap down your throat, but I've disguised myself as a sheep and you're buying it. Now you're under the influence of Russia, whether you knew it or not. Assume the worst in everybody who gives you information and trust but verify, the old arms control phrase, verify, verify, verify. Challenge everything. If someone says something, find out where the source came from. Find out what the data is. But ultimately, it's like any question. It's up to what you believe, what you've done to inform yourself. Knowledge is power. You empower yourself by acquiring knowledge. So the more people that you can listen to, the more data you can receive, the better informed you will be as a person. And I hope I'm playing a part of that. I'd like to be a part of that. That's why I'm doing this. I don't like to look at myself on camera, and I don't like to listen to myself afterwards. But people say that this is valuable. Okay, so I'm here, I'm talking, I'm putting it out there. But please don't rely on this alone. No, use this as maybe a step in the direction of finding more information, empowering yourself. But it takes work. And again, I can't tell you what to access, where to access it, how to access it. You got to do that. Telegram has a lot of very useful channels on it, but it also has a lot of crap on it. Twitter used to be okay. Now the NAFO team has come in and just drowned it with, I can't use bad words here, but they basically their job is to drown out any debate by overwhelming it with just garbage. That's their tactic. They say that's what their tactic is. They use a specific term. It's with an S. Their job is just to sit there and flood everything to drown any debate, promote a single line. So Twitter is becoming sort of useless. Telegram needs to be discerning. You have to be careful what you buy into. Then there's other people out there. The Duran is a podcast that does a very good job. I would say that anything that I'm on when I do it with you or anything else could be listened to, but don't rely on it totally. Just listen to it, balance it. There's just lots of platforms out there that try to do something similar to what we're trying to do here today. So if you have the time, listen to as many as you can, and then empower yourself with your own point of view.
Okay. Can you talk about the U.S. sending upgraded B-61 12 airdrop gravity bomb systems, originally slated for next spring, that is now planned for this December.
The B-61 bomb is a family of bombs. There have been several iterations of it. But basically, we have a certain number. That number is classified, but it's between 60 and 120. In Europe, at a number of bases, that number is classified, but it's between, say, 3 and 5. And these are the bombs that we use and that we've provide to NATO. See, NATO has a lot of non-nuclear nations in there, but they need assurance in terms of the nuclear umbrella that if Russia or Soviet Union in the past would go to war, that America just wouldn't abandon them. So they want to buy into the nuclear enterprise. So we provide the bombs, and they have specific aircraft and aircrew that are trained to deliver these bombs. And in time of war, the United States would release these bombs to these NATO aircraft, and they would use these bombs as part of NATO's nuclear deterrent. So it gives everybody a buy-in to that. Each bomb has different capabilities. The older bombs were crude. They just were large, multi-megaton bombs designed to flatten everything. Since then, our nuclear postures become more agile, I'll say, meaning that we're going away from just purely nuking the hell out of everybody to maybe we can do a limited nuclear strike, or we can do this, that, and the other. So we have, there was a series of B-61 bombs that had dial-in yieldage, so that we weren't limited to just a big bomb, that we could say, here's the target. Maybe we don't want to hit it with 100 megatons. It's too big, but we don't want to hit it with the multi-megatons. Maybe we want to dial it down to 100 kilotons. Ooh. It's still going to kill everybody, but so we dial it in. Then we have bombs that have to penetrate. You see, right now we have bombs that, if they hit a reinforced thing, they hit it with pressure, but maybe the pressure isn't enough to collapse the structure. So we want a bomb that has a penetration capability, so it can penetrate in before it detonates underground. So that's a different kind of B-61 bomb. And now I believe the most recent one is a penetrating low yield. I have to go in and double check on that, but it's basically a low yield weapon is one that doesn't destroy cities. It's one that gives us the option of a limited nuclear war. Now, the funny thing about a limited nuclear war is if one side thinks it's fighting a limited nuclear war, but the other one isn't, it ain't limited. And Russia doesn't fight limited nuclear wars, but we're fooling ourselves by building this weapon that we now have the ability to have some flexibility in terms of our nuclear posture, where we can drop this advanced B-61 bomb in a manner which has a low yield, limited result, and we can say, you guys don't want to nuke us because we'll nuke you back and destroy you, but we're going to get away with this because it's too small for you to really care about it. Russia's doctrine is if you use a nuke against them, they take out the world. But the danger here is not just that this weapon is being produced and considered, but it's being accelerated. Its deployment is being accelerated, which now means that NATO is going to have additional flexibility into the self-delusional approach of potential for limited nuclear conflict. There can be no nuclear conflict. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So this weapon is one of the more dangerous weapons in the world, not because of its destructive potential as an individual weapon, but because it leads people to believe they can get away with using a nuclear weapon without suffering consequences. But you will always suffer the consequences of nuclear weapons usage. There is no such thing as a limited nuclear war. And if you use a nuclear weapon of any size against Russia, they will hit you with everything they got.
Okay. This is my last question on my questions, and then I would like to take a couple more on YouTube. So sure. This is the last one that I have written down. Is Russia and Britain on the brink of war due to Russia allegation that the British Navy not only orchestrated and coordinated, but actually penetrated the attacks on the Nord Stream pipeline, and also that the British were complicit, possibly the M16 in bombing of the Crimea Bridge?
Well, I don't know about MI6 and the Crimea Bridge. I don't have enough information about that. I will say this, that the Nord Stream 2 apparently is based upon Russia gaining access to the iPhone cloud, backdoor access. And they have all the communications between Liz Truss, the former prime minister, and the world, including one where she apparently texted to Anthony Blinken right after Nord Stream was hit, "It's done," meaning Britain did it. That's big. That's a big deal because it's not so much that Britain attacked Russia. Britain attacked Germany. Britain attacked Europe. I mean, it's just Europe should be just outraged about this. It shut off Russian gas, but it was a $12 billion pipeline funded by, 49% interest coming out of Europe. It's Germany's lifeline, and they just shut it down. And the fact that she's communicating to Blinken means that there was collusion there, that the United States was aware of the plan, supported the plan, was awaiting feedback, when the plan was implemented. The other thing you didn't mention, though, is the attack on the U.S. On the Russian Navy in Sevastopol, the drone attack, the underwater drones that appear to have come out of Odessa and followed a shipping lane that had been negotiated with the United Nations, Ukraine, Russia, and Turkey to be demilitarized, so that food shipment would be brought out of Odessa and brought to the world, which is starving. But these drones followed this path and then deviated and went and struck the Russian fleet. So the Russians have terminated their participation in that food agreement, which is problematic for many people who need that food. But the other thing is the Russians reverse engineered the debris, and it appears the British were involved in this as well. So Britain is attacking not just international pipelines, they're attacking Russian ships. They are literally, I mean, if this happened to America, I can guarantee you we'd be dropping bombs right now, because that's an act of war. But Russia understands that Great Britain the United Kingdom is part of NATO, and that this would be an Article 5 thing. So they're not going to do that. But they've already struck back. They blew up an office in Odessa where the British apparently had a naval liaison detachment. I don't know if there's any casualties there. But I will say this: the Russians, they're not going to let. They know that Britain did this, and there will be a price to be paid. I don't know what that price is going to be. I don't know when Russia is going to exact that price. But you don't get away with this kind of stuff scot-free. There will be hell to pay. It will be done in a way that doesn't trigger Article 5. But England needs to understand that there are consequences for criminal behavior, and everything that we just discussed is criminal behavior. It's a violation of international law. England is not a party to this conflict. England has no authority under any version of international law to be involved in this conflict, and therefore everything they did is criminal.
All right. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of comments and a couple questions on YouTube on the Real True Talk. It's one person says, Georgia Robinson says, "God bless you, Scott. I never missed your programs." Someone else says, "Well, yes, yes, it's his job to find the real numbers."
I'm trying.
Ask if any repercussions may ensue after the Sevastopol fleet attack. What you were just talking about the drone.
Yeah. I think we already see the repercussions. And let me tell you how it's affecting England. The whole idea of the food convoys out of Odessa was to prevent starvation in the developing world, primarily Africa, where there's a lot of starving people. But Russia noted from the beginning, the first 17 shipments that were sent out, 15 of those shipments went to Europe. Wait a minute, is Europe starving? No, it's just the way we work in the West. You see, we pretend to care about the African people, but we don't. We only care about ourselves. So 15 of the first 17 ships went to European destinations to feed an already fat European population. And since that time, there's been some modification, but the Russians say over 50% of the food shipments were sent to Europe. So now Russia's dropped out of it. They said it's not going to happen anymore. Who's paying the price? Go ask the British people what happened to their food prices right now. When as soon as Russia dropped out, food prices are going through the roof because they were all sitting there going, "Oh, we're going to continue to scam the world. We're going to continue to steal the food that's meant for the poor, starving Africans, but we're going to take it ourselves." And now we don't have any food to steal, which means that They have to pay prices. They have to compete on the market to get food. Prices are going up. Who can the British people thank for that? Thank your government, Liz Truss. Thank the new guy, Sunak. Whoever you want. Don't blame Russia. Thank your government. It's their fault. They brought this upon you. So there's that price. But then, like I said, there will be the Russian Navy suffered casualties. Sailors died. Put yourself in their shoes. You know who attacked you, and you're not going to exact revenge. Now, you're not going to be allowed to fire caliber missiles or anything out there in an overt fashion. But the Russian Navy has a long memory, and they have very capable troops. And somewhere, someplace, the British are going to suffer some losses. And that's going to be in revenge for what they did in Sevastopol, in revenge for what they did against the Nord Stream pipeline. So get ready for it, England. You can thank your government, too, because some of the boys that currently serve you today, honorable men, are going to die. And they're going to die because of what your government has done.
All right. Joe Koo says, ask Scott what is his favorite Dylan song or album is.
Favorite Dylan song or album? Well, there's so many. Blood on the Tracks has to be perhaps my favorite album, just because I listened to a lot in college. So, when you do things repetitively, it's there. I have a lot of favorite songs, but one of my best is from that album. Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts is just a classic song. If you listen to it, the lyrics jump out. It's telling a story. It's a great story. But, there's also, he's just done so many good ones. One of my favorite songs of his is not just a song, but when it was played, he did a concert in Japan, and he sang, oh gosh, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. And it was done with an orchestra backup and all that, but just the way that orchestra plays, the lyrics and all that, I just think that song hits me because it's one of the classic anti-war songs. If you listen to it, it just rips your heart out, and it's a good song that way. But again, there's just so much music. There's songs that make you happy. There's songs that make you think. Songs that entertain you. Hurricane is a great song about racial injustice here in America. But we could go on. Dylan he's great. There's a reason why he won the Nobel Prize for literature. It's because he's a poet. He's not just a songwriter. He's a poet, and his lyrics they speak on. You may not like his voice. His voice is unique, but when you combine his voice with his with the lyrics, it's overwhelmingly powerful. Desolation Row. It's just, again, a killer song.
Okay. This guy, Alex, his name is Alex. He says, could you ask him what his opinion is about the updated U.S. military doctrines, especially regarding using nukes? I think you talked about that about Biden.
Yeah, the Biden administration just put out what they call the National Security Strategy of the United States, the 2022 vision. I actually wrote an article on it this morning that hopefully we'll post on Consortium News. So you're welcome to read that when it comes out. But again, one of the things is that Biden promised in campaigning that he would have this statement on sole use, and it's not there. We're holding the world hostage to nuclear blackmail. The other thing is the way, you asked me a question about what I would do as president. Well, one thing I wouldn't do as president is publish a document like this. This is an insult to the world. If you read this document, it talks about the superiority of America, the superiority of the American way, superiority of American democracy, and the fact that the world must rally around us as the only option against the autocratic threats of Russia and China. Now, I'm not here to defend Russia and China. They can do that. That's not my job. What I can say, though, is that if you don't respect the fact, when people keep saying the world is against Russia's invasion of Ukraine, pull up a map of the world and color in the nations that are against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And you'll find out that our definition of the world is actually very small. It's the United States, Canada, NATO, Japan. That's about it. And then you get into who's not against it. And all I have to do is name 3 countries right off the bat. Let's go. China, India, Indonesia, and I've already got more people there than are in the rest of the world that supports America. So when you say the world is against, that's just misleading. And everything about the Biden doctrine that he put out is misleading because the world does not support this. This document is about American singularity, sustaining the notion that America and America alone gets to determine for the world what is right and what is wrong. And this is a dangerous document, especially when it's attached to a nuclear policy that says we can use nuclear weapons anytime we want against any threat we want, whenever we want.
Right. The story of Zelensky reminds me of a guy right out of his tiny village. No offense to villagers. They are usually happy, productive people. It's the inevitable scoop through the level of interactions put in charge of the world affairs. Um, it's, it's, it's like his mood swings, hatred, contempt, or sense of vengeance should be all resonated globally, especially in other countries where his power should not match that of an ordinary citizen, let alone a national level temporary decision maker to be replaced with another one. This guy is simply interfering with the international affairs, including both other states and other uh, receptive citizens in very destructive and demanding fashion. It's as if the world owes him for being a fool to go to war with neighboring superpower. He went from a comedian to a sad joke. I guess it was just a comment.
Well, I'll make first of all, I totally agree with the sentiment, and I agree with that statement. It's bad. But let's think about Zelensky for a second. You say he's a comedian. The irony about Zelensky is this: he made his name. I mean, he was already a popular comedian in Ukraine, but he made his reputation in a show called Servant of the People. And I'm not here to promote Zelensky's economic well-being. It's a pretty good show. It's a funny show. And what makes the show amazing is that he was every man. He was basically a school teacher who got caught on video by one of his students going off against corruption. And then they posted that video on the internet, and then it went viral and suddenly became a superstar, and he got elevated to be the president of Ukraine. And okay, so he's a man, but then he spends his entire term fighting corruption. And what made the show resonate with the average Ukrainian citizen is that the corruption is real. I mean, it would be if we had a show here in America and we're talking about crime fighting, but it had nothing to do with reality. What makes a crime fighting show real is that anybody who watches it looks at the crime being fought and goes, that's real. That's my neighborhood. That's bad. I'm watching this because I'm entertained. So now they're watching this comedy of this president fighting corruption, and it resonates for every Ukrainian because the corruption is real at every level. No matter, I mean, the thing about the show is everybody's corrupt. Everybody's corrupt. That's the reality of Ukraine, the most corrupt nation on the planet. So now we have Zelensky, who's the president in real life, not on TV, of the most corrupt country on the planet. And what does he do? He becomes as corrupt. I mean, this is a sad state of affairs. They thought they were voting for the president. It's like Americans voting for Martin Sheen because of what they saw on West Wing. I don't know anything about Martin Sheen as a person or a human, but I can tell you right now, he played a character on TV. That's not him. The character isn't Martin Sheen. I don't know how Martin Sheen would act as president. We now know how Zelensky acts, and he's not capable of the job. He's not up to the task. He's failing, and therefore, when you're that weak as a political leader, you're susceptible to being used by different powers and different special interests. And in Ukraine, every special interest is corrupt, which means you're being used by the very corruption people elected you to oppose. I feel bad for Zelensky because he's totally out of his depth in this situation. And the end result is a global tragedy that resonates not just regionally, but around the world. And it's a tragedy for the Ukrainian people. They're suffering. Hundreds of thousands are going to die. And their country is being destroyed. There will never be a Ukraine. The people that voted for Zelensky have a vision of what Ukraine was. That country will never again exist, physically, economically, politically. It's all because you put a comedian in office.
So he went from acting to a higher stage of acting.
Good point. Can I steal
Um,
that one? Because I'm going to.
uh, let's see. Ask Scott what he thinks about the prospect of NATO nuclear weapons being put in Finland.
No, first of all, NATO nuclear weapons will never be put in Finland. NATO doesn't have any nuclear weapons. America has nuclear weapons. And the nuclear policy of NATO is a consensus-driven organization. Finland is not a member of NATO yet, and they probably never will be because Turkey opposes it. But even if they were, all of NATO would have to agree that Finland now gets to house nuclear weapons. And all it takes is one NATO member saying, no, I'm uncomfortable with that. So the talk right now is that Finland, the rumor is Finland's is passing legislation which will allow nuclear weapons to be stored on its soil, and that the United States would buy these weapons unilaterally. No, it's not going to happen. The United States, if the United States did that, entered into a unilateral agreement with Finland, then what is the NATO nuclear umbrella? It's meaningless. NATO won't support that. I think this is, I'd have to go back and check the source, whether or not there's really legislation. I would doubt the Finns would do that. If the Finns are doing that, I would doubt it would be being done with. See, I don't think the Finns would do that without America telling you, yeah, we're going to work with you on this one. I don't think the Finns lead and then tell America, we're ready to receive nukes, but they've never had that conversation. So I question this, but I'll check it out. I'm not dismissing it outright because, frankly speaking, I haven't done the deep dig into it. But the concept of America deploying nuclear weapons in Finland, that close to Russia, I mean, first of all, it doesn't do you any good, Finland, because you're right next to Russia. Well, the Russians are going to be watching that. And the second you send a truck, the Finns, it's going to take a nuclear bomb. Boom, it's gone. So, no. And the United States isn't going to put itself in a position. We don't let anybody pull the nuclear trigger but ourselves. So why would we give Finland access to the nuclear trigger? And that's what we do when we put nuclear weapons in Finland, because the moment Russia preempts them, takes them out, we're now called upon to take action in response. Now, Finland has the ability to dictate our national security. No. If Finland joins NATO, then Finland's part of a collective alliance that's governed by Article 4 and Article 5. But Finland by itself is not going to receive American nuclear weapons. That's just dumber than dirt. Now, watch me go read out and find out that everything's true. And then, I'll say, A, I was wrong, and B, oh my God, what a world we live in, where America violates every principle they stand for. Because remember, I used to be part of the American nuclear weapons establishment. I know why we have nukes. I know how we want to use them. And nothing about putting nukes in Finland makes sense under the policies that I was aware of. Now, there might be new policies. I don't know. Maybe America wants to commit suicide. But normally I would imagine that we don't want to, and putting nuclear weapons in Finland is a quick path to suicide.
Ask Scott about the Ukrainian army casualties, dead, wounded, prisoners of war.
Well, I would say that there's a lot of them. The specific numbers we don't know. The numbers might be higher than anything anybody's thinking right now. The Russians have put out a number that's very high, 61,000 dead. That was put out earlier. Ukraine's been carrying out offensive operations that are high casualty rates since then. So one could realistically expect that that number has increased by 40,000, maybe even more. So now we're looking at 100,000 dead. The Ukrainian mothers, wives, sisters have filed a petition to the Ukrainian government, about 320,000 Ukrainian soldiers who are missing, unaccounted for. So that's a lot of potential dead. Now, they could be deserters, they could be wounded, taken prisoner. I don't know, but that's an awful lot. The bottom line is Ukraine's just getting chewed up. Now, people say, well, what about the Russians? Well, the Russians have put out a number, 6,000. But people say it might be low. I don't think it's that low. It doesn't include certain categories. It doesn't include Wagner. It doesn't include the Donetsk and Lugansk militias. It doesn't include some of the volunteer forces. So I imagine that you could, given the fact that those other troops are heavily involved in fighting, that you could be looking at closer to 15, 16,000 dead, maybe up plus a couple thousand more, but not significantly more than that. And then on the wounded, you could probably be looking at between 30 and 45,000 wounded. So total casualties, let's say it's 45,000 wounded, 16,000 dead. Quick Marine math, I think that's 45 plus 10, 55 plus 6, 61,000 casualties. That's a lot of casualties, but it's nothing compared to what the Ukrainians are suffering. So, we won't know until the war is over and casualty figures are published. Let's say this: if the Russians are suffering extremely high casualties, they don't want to admit it because that could cause political problems. But Russia is also a nation that has to be responsive to the families of the service members. And if Russia was suffering a lot of casualties that would be underreported, I think we'd be hearing about it on it. So I trust the Russian casualty figures. The Ukrainian figures are just all over the map. I don't trust the Ukrainian government to tell the truth about the casualty figures because they would never survive if they told the Ukrainian people the truth about what's going on. But I think it's a very, very large number.
Okay. I just have two more questions. Ask Scott about the possibility of China helping Russia with intelligence.
Well, I think there's a level of sharing taking place. We know in the Pacific that Russia and Chinese forces are doing joint drills together. That implies not just operational connectivity, but intelligence connectivity. I think at a strategic level, they have shared strategic interests, so that China would be providing some strategic intelligence. But in terms of Ukraine, China's not positioned to offer anything, I think, of significance. Russia has extremely well-developed human networks. Russia has extremely well-developed signals, communications intercept capabilities. Russia has very focused imagery collection. I don't know what China brings to the table that adds to that. I don't think China's involved in tactical intelligence, operational intelligence. From a strategic intelligence standpoint, China probably is providing economic intelligence, political intelligence, and some strategic military intelligence about what's going on in the Pacific. But other than that, who knows? Look, they say that their relationship is friendship. It's stronger than any alliance. And I think so long as Russia and China have this kind of cooperative attitude, it shouldn't surprise anybody that there's intelligence sharing taking place at the highest possible levels.
Okay, this is my last question. A guy, I don't know how to say his name, but he wants me to ask you, do you believe that the devil is real?
I believe that there is good, and I believe that there is evil. How you want to quantify evil is up to you. But whether you call him the devil, Satan, Lucifer, or some other name, whether it's manifest in an individual, an all-powerful being, or just plain bad people. There's evil in the world. There's no doubt about that. We've seen it throughout history. And I believe that there's good in the world, and we've seen that. And I believe that ultimately good is fully capable of conquering evil. Yes. But it's not going to be easy, and its outcome is not assured. So unless you redouble your efforts to do good, and that starts by being nice to other people. Being good means respecting other cultures, other religions. Being good means seeking a nonviolent solution to a problem that probably offers up a violent solution. Pick peace over war. Pick helping people over kicking people. And then good will conquer evil. But if you don't, whether you call it the devil, whatever you want to call it, there's evil. It's out there. It haunts us. And unless we guard against it, it can defeat us.
And I also would like to say that good is telling the truth or being honest.
That's part of it. Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe. I believe in. Look. I'll tell a white lie. Honey, do you like this dress? It's beautiful, baby. But so I am fully capable of telling white lies because I'm not dumb. But when it comes to big things, no. I mean, tell the truth, regardless of the consequences.
Well, like we always say, happy wife, happy life. I tell my wife the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
If I don't like it, she doesn't like it, she'll go change. But I have to tell the truth. So I just want to end off by saying this is your book. I have it, and you signed it for me. You did sign it for me, and I'm gonna put it on the description box how they can get their own, and hopefully, if they're around where you're at, they can get it signed also.
Yep.
But this is Scott's book, and I'm gonna put it in the description box how you can order it. It's an awesome book. It's a must read. And I just want to say thank you, Scott, for your time and for you know uh, because of you, I before I started interviewing you, I only had 1,000 subscribers. Now I'm up to like 5,000. Maybe if I get to like close to 10, or then I'll probably start. Uh, I'll probably become monetized, but right now I'm not. But I want to thank you for because you helped grow my channel from 1,000 to 5,000. And I think people are interested and hungry for the truth, and that's why they listen to you. And they listen to you on Telegram, Scott Ritter Telegram, and then they come here and they listen. And I just thank you for all you do for us, the truth tellers, and I just want to say thank you. And I want to encourage everybody to order your book. And thank you so much for being here with us at the Real True Talk. And hopefully we do this again next month. I don't like to ask all the time because I know you're very busy and you have a lot of things going on. And
Hey, Juan, Marines
Yes,
help Marines. Anytime you want to talk, let me know. I'm here to help you out.
yes, sir. Simplify. I appreciate you,
Simplify.
Scott.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Juan.
you
Have a
for
great day. Thanks for having me.
thank you for answering all our questions.